Suddenly, these lace curtains ignited.
Suddenly, terrifyingly came.
Another necktie murder.
Evil reason I'm ever accused.
Others never can.
Junger Mann, du fehlst mir noch in meinem Stundenplan.
I think I better go now. I gotta be at rehearsal in an hour.
The world would be a happier place if everyone had the same phobia about blood as myself.
Hi there. Excuse me, do you have some iodine or some alcohol? It'd just be great. The fact is, my girlfriend just stuck a can opener into her hand.
Someone attacked me. I couldn't see who it was. He was masked and waiting for me. I must say, you tempt any human being.
Murderers! Leave my son alone, you hear, you filthy whore!
Hi people, this is Gianni Giovanni Lombardo Radice from Stage Fright, and you are listening to the Hysteria Continues.
Yes, welcome back to the Hysteria Continues, episode number 37, I believe. And this week we're off to London via Berlin, and then jetting off to Roma as we cover our first Krimi and our third Giallo. So without further ado, I'll welcome you to our fellow filthy whores. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm good. I carried a watermelon.
You carried a watermelon? Why did you carry a watermelon? Is this some obscure reference I should know?
It's a reference to Dirty Dancing. It's this very highbrow art film that I don't think you probably would be interested in.
Well, you know, I've never actually watched Dirty Dancing, Eric. You know that, don't you?
I do, yeah. Because you're a real boy.
I'm a real boy, yeah. I only watch action movies and films with
Shannon Tweed in them.
Oh, yes. With a box of tissues nearby.
Ew.
Because I find them very sad.
Right, sorry,
yes.
Yeah.
So, and Joseph, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm the Phantom of NoHo.
NoHo? Oh.
Means I have no hoe right now.
No. Oh.
Well, get yourself over to Nathan's.
He's not my type.
And are you the Phantom of No Mo, Nathan?
No, I'm not I'm not a phantom. I'm trying to figure out what those strange drops of blood are doing on Jennifer's body, though.
I know. What were they doing? Well, they weren't doing anything, were they? Because there weren't any, or were there? And that's what we'll be talking about a little bit later. We are covering two movies, this time a double bill, Euro double bill, with, say, our first Krimi, which is The Phantom of Soho from 1963. Talk a little bit about what a Krimi is, in case you don't know, a little bit when we get to the film. And also the 1971 or 72 Giallo, The Case of the Bloody Iris, or, as Nathan said, what are those strange drops of blood doing on Jennifer's body? So that's coming up shortly. Before we do that, we'll have a quick chat like we normally do about films we've been watching recently. So who wants to go first? How about you, Joseph?
Well, I haven't watched much since we recorded last week, but I rewatched Aliens, and I liked it a lot more than I did before. I always thought, the first Alien was the best, and I still do, but I always had this thing where I thought Aliens was just a routine action film, but, watching it in glorious Blu-ray this past Friday, I had a better appreciation for it. It's a lot of fun, and the effects still hold up today, I think, and I think my only problem with the film is the inclusion of the little kid. I understand her purpose is that, you got to give Ripley a reason to kind of kick ass at the end, and I think it's kind of manipulative. But other than that, it's a really good film.
At least the little kid wasn't annoying like a lot of kids in movies.
That's true. She didn't really whine or anything.
She's a bad actress, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they mostly come at night.
Mostly.
But that was her only role, wasn't it, Newt? That was because I watched Aliens as well. And obviously, the reason we'll probably talk about that is obviously going to probably talk about Prometheus a little bit, which I don't think Joseph and Nathan have seen. But I really watched Aliens on Blu-ray. Did you watch the longer version?
I don't remember. It was like 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, it was still the theatrical, though.
You did well because the theatrical one, I think, were kind of missed. They cut out all of that preamble, didn't they? The base with the with all the miners and the family at the beginning. I don't think any of that was in the theatrical version, was it? I think that was the bits they cut out, and I'm not even sure they may have cut out the whole thing about Ripley's daughter as well. I don't know.
They did, remember.
Yeah. So it kind of gave the whole thing, but I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a good way of making a sequel that's completely different to the original, but actually kind of works under its own kind of own steam. I kind of guess
it's definitely more of an action film than the first one, but I had a lot of fun. I'll definitely watch it again.
Mm-hmm. I was looking up; it only cost $17 million to make, which is probably, I don't know what that would be in today's money, but when you look at sort of things like Battleship and John Carter and all these kind of flops that cost over $200 million to make, it looked like there's a lot of money up on the screen in Aliens, didn't it?
But yeah, I made a comment that they didn't spend a whole lot of money on Aliens, and it looks incredible. It looks so real, and then you get these movies, like you mentioned, like John Carter and whatever that cost considerably more money. And they don't look as, polished or real. They look too kind of, the CGI is really heavy and it doesn't look real or it looks kind of fake.
I thought the spaceship effects in Aliens I didn't think held up that well on Blu-ray. I thought that the creature effects are stunning, and the whole stuff on the base, but any other sort of spaceships flying through were kind of hokey looking, I thought.
The aliens are a little... The spaceships are a little green screen, you can tell, but it's not. I mean, it's not terrible. I mean,
no, it's not terrible.
The alien effects still hold up. I think they look. Wow, they just looked amazing in Blu-ray.
Especially the Queen is amazing. Yeah. For there's just this gigantic puppet pre-CGI. It's an astonishing feat of engineering.
Yes.
Yeah, they used a lot of miniatures too.
Yeah, you could tell that a little bit of the Blu-ray, couldn't you? And also the bit where they had the crash. Very much look like green screen, but we're talking about film that's almost
25 years old.
25 years old, yeah. So, but yeah. So, have you been watching anything else, Joseph?
Yeah, just that, and rewatched The Terminator, which I won't go into too much about that. I just to say I love The Terminator. I think it's a dark, cerebral, kind of gritty film. Where again, whereas the second one is more of an action film, the first one is more intelligent and it's more of a thriller. That's about all I have to say about it. It's just it's a great movie. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, of course. I'm just going back to Aliens just very quickly. Just kind of just the slasher connection with Aliens is obviously Bill Paxton, isn't it? I was just thinking the only thing could have improved it would have been him skipping with some flowers down the hall like he did in Mortuary. But
of course, Michael Biehn would later go on to be in Cherry Falls.
Yeah,
and also The Fan.
And The Fan, wasn't
he? Yeah, and The Fan. Yeah, that's right.
So I don't know if any of the others. I don't know.
I haven't seen Copycat, but is that kind of slashery? It's got Sigourney Weaver in it.
Copycat is excellent. You need to watch that. It's very underrated.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Joseph. How about you, Nathan?
Yes, I've watched a few, actually. Last night I watched Piranha 3 Double D.
What was that like?
It was brilliant.
Was it?
It was amazing. It was better than the first.
Really?
It was awesome in every conceivable way.
Are you being sarcastic?
Or you kind of know what you're in for when in one of the scenes the character's head flies through a screaming crowd and a topless woman catches it between her boobs and starts screaming. So right. You kind of get the idea of what kind of movie you're going to be watching.
So you saying it's fantastic in a straight way, as in like you actually thought it was fantastic, or you thought it was dreadful? You thought it was dreadful but fantastic at the same time.
Well, I mean, it's just not going to win any Academy Awards, obviously. It's just a cheesy, dumb, fun movie, and it knows what it is, and that's all it tries to be. It doesn't try to be intelligent in any way, shape, or form.
Because some of the feedback I've heard from people, because it kind of obviously bombed pretty badly in the UK, and it's probably part of the reason why it kind of opened so few screens in the States. I think it's kind of got a very limited release, but people were criticising it, saying that the first one was dumb fun, but this one goes beyond dumb fun into more comedy rather than horror.
Yes, I would classify it as a comedy more than a horror film because there's no real suspense or suspenseful scenes like there are a few suspenseful scenes in the first one, but I mean I didn't care. I mean it was really fun and entertaining, and that's all I really wanted anyway.
Did you watch it in 3D?
Yes, I did.
Okay, was that on?
And the 3D is unbelievably shameless. So I loved it even more for that.
Right. And was that at the cinema, or was that on sort of video on demand?
I watched it on demand.
Okay, excellent. Right. I mean, have you seen that, Joseph? Did you watch it?
No, not yet. I didn't think the first one was all that great. I thought the first one was just kind of so I'm not in a real hurry to see the second one now, but I'll watch it eventually.
Okay. And I take it you didn't. I remember we talked about this last time, didn't we, Eric? And it had gone.
Yeah, well, I would have liked to have seen it, but it came and went in the cinemas really quickly, so I never got a chance in the end. Okay.
All right. Interesting, Nathan. Anything else?
I also saw a movie from 1990 called The Suckling, which is about a guy who he wants his girlfriend to get an abortion, and she's kind of reluctant, but he ends up taking her to this illegal abortion clinic, which is also a whorehouse. And the madam of the whorehouse gives abortions, and they end up, drugging her, and, the boyfriend drugs her, and she ends up getting the abortion, and, they flush the baby down the toilet, and it lands in the sewer, and somehow a barrel of toxic waste is dripping into the sewer, and it drips on the baby, and the baby awakens as an evil mutant. So then it covers the whole whorehouse in this mucus membrane so they can't escape, and starts killing off, the prostitutes and the Johns and the workers at the abortion clinic and any clients that are there for abortions. So, it's kind of a bloodbath at the whorehouse.
Okay, and did that win Best Picture in 1990?
It did not. But I thought it was really
family film.
I thought it was really fun. It's really stupid, but it's stupid fun.
You know what it was called in the UK?
Sewer Baby?
No, I think it was Monstered, like Monster Turd.
I'm just looking.
That's a different film, isn't it?
I think that's a different movie.
Oh, I thought it was AKA The Suckling, but I might be wrong.
It's also known as Sewage Baby.
Oh, maybe I'm getting confused with that, but
the UK,
Monstered's like a recent post 2K movie, I think.
Oh, is it? Okay. I'm just thinking of something else, but anyway, okay. I bet you said it was a kind of a trashy, fun sort of movie.
Yeah, some parts reminded me of John Waters, actually.
Okay.
Especially, I'll tell you what part reminded me of John Waters is when the woman, the madam, finishes giving a coat hanger abortion, and she's picking pieces of flesh off the coat hanger. Then she bends it back and hangs her lab coat on it.
Right. Okay. So quite knowing in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I take it, Joseph and Eric, you've not had the pleasure.
Not yet. No.
It sounds like a pleasure. Let me tell you.
Right. Anything else, Nathan?
Well, the last thing I watched, and it's not really a horror movie, but I was really surprised I'd never seen it up till now, was Class of 1984. And I thought it was great. I thought it was an excellent film, and, I really loved Roddy McDowall in that movie. Like, his kind of descent into madness was kind of fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and it's got, what's the name, isn't it, from Happy Birthday to Me? Who I can't remember her name now. She plays one of the punk chicks, doesn't she?
And Keith Thingy from My Bloody Valentine is in there as well. We're very good with our facts today.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of what's his name, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but okay, right. Well, thank you, Nathan. Eric, what have you been watching?
I watched a film that's opened theatrically over here, but I think it's gone straight to DVD in America. It's called The Pact. It's kind of a fairly decent mashup between kind of a haunted house ghost story and a serial killer movie. It's about a woman searching for her sister who goes missing in the home they were brought up in as children. And there's sort of secrets from their mother's past that they weren't aware of. And it's got a few good scares. It's got one of my favorite horror film tropes, which is a spectral figure appearing in a photograph, which I always find quite spooky. But the rest of the film is kind of fairly ho-hum, and I can see why it went. It didn't get a theatrical release in the States. And I mean, it's got, is it Casper Van Diem is his name?
Oh, from Starship Troopers? From
Starship Troopers, yeah, who has become the king of straight to video. I think this is the first theatrical feature he's had since Starship Troopers, if memory serves me right. But I mean, it's okay. It's not bad at all. I mean, it's getting some scathing reviews in certain places, but I thought it was perfectly passable. It reminded me of, remember that Sarah Michelle Gellar movie, The Return? Which is very sort of generic and, nothing spectacular, but not awful either. It's kind of along those lines.
Okay, because I saw the trailer for it in front of, was it Prometheus? It might have been in front of Prometheus, and it had all the you know, those kind of little critical bonbons where people going scariest movie ever and all that kind of stuff, and and it looked quite fun, but it's no Paranormal Activity or Insidious then.
No, definitely not. Like it turns halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through into a serial killer movie and sort of drops the ghostly aspect, which I thought the ghostly aspect was the stronger part of it.
That's kind of strange. Okay. Has it come out on DVD in the States? I take it.
It's on video. It came out in video on demand at the end of May.
Right.
So does that mean it's come out on DVD as well, or necessarily? I'm not sure how it works.
But I take it neither of you've seen it, have you?
No, I've never even heard of it.
I hadn't heard of it until about a week before, when it was plastered on every bus going around Dublin, and I was like, "What's this film, The Pact?" I'd heard no advance on it at all.
Right. Well, no, I'll look out for it, but I probably won't make the trip to cinema. It's probably, again, one of those kind of one-week wonders, isn't it? I would have thought.
I think it is very much, yeah.
Yes. And you might hear in the background, that's Straps, isn't it? Stripes. Sorry, Kim was going Straps. Stripes is going to be is the fourth member, isn't he, of the podcast? Is it he or
Every
she?
time you say Straps, I think of some kind of sadomasochistic thing.
Oh, what are you doing to her?
Nothing. She meows all the time for no reason.
Oh. I think every
She's
podcast...
just laying in the floor looking at me and meowing.
Oh, bless. But every podcast you hear, every other podcast has a cat somewhere in the background. I've shut them out today, so you won't hear my pussies.
I usually do, but the room I'm in now, she can get into this room, so...
That's all right. We don't mind. We don't mind Stripes. So we'll ask Stripes in a minute what she's been watching. Anything else, Eric?
Yeah, well, just one other thing I watched for the first time. I've been meaning to watch it for about 10 years now, and I'm assuming you've probably seen it, Justin, because I think it's right up your street. It's The Apple, which is the Menahem Golan film from 1980.
I know of it. I've never seen it.
All right. Well, it's set. It was made in 1980, and it's set in the future of 1994, and it's set at this futuristic Eurovision Song Contest.
Okay.
It's kind of a musical. It's about two characters who get it actually reminds me a bit of Breaking Glass, you know, the Hazel O'Connor film, where she gets sucked into the music industry and it doesn't turn out to be all she thought. And this is kind of the same, except it's set in the future, and it's incredibly cheesy. It stars Catherine Mary Stewart, who was in Night of the Comet, and it's jaw-droppingly weird. From what I've read in the background, he was expecting it to be a big box office sensation, but it's got semi-religious overtones in it. It's I don't know what to say. There's people dancing around in tinfoil with glowing triangles stuck to their foreheads.
So it sounds like a Toyo video.
Well, it's funny. It's actually is kind of like an early 80s pop video. It reminded me of who sang "I Lost My Heart to a Starship Trooper."
Oh, Sarah Brightman and
Hot Gossip. Was it?
Yeah,
It's very much like that. I mean, it is sensationally off its tits on something. I don't know how to describe the film. I think setting it at a futuristic Eurovision Song Contest kind of says everything you need to know about it.
I think by that point in the early 1980s or 1980 with like Xanadu and Can't Stop the Music, I think they kind of had that. They'd had all the drugs, hadn't they? And at the end of the 70s,
yes.
And I thought,
well, I watched Can't Stop the Music as well because I was kind of on that late 70s, early 80s musical abomination fest. And of course, Can't Stop the Music is the one with the Village People in it and Steve Guttenberg, and that's a combination in itself.
You didn't steep to going down to Sextet.
No, but I did stoop to go down to Thank God It's Friday, starring Donna Summer, the Commodores, and Valerie Landsberg from The Kids from Fame.
Okay, I haven't seen that one. Have you seen Sextet?
Not yet, no. Remind me what it is?
It's the one with Mae West playing a sex bomb at the age of about 87. She's got Alzheimer's by the look of it, and she shuffles around going, "Stop!" and singing those kind of pop songs to Timothy Dalton, and he keeps on. She makes all these innuendos to Muscle Boys and things like that throughout it, and it's got Alice Cooper playing a bellhop. It's very strange,
yes,
but it's really entertaining. It's incredibly bad and incredibly embarrassing, and I have shown it to people, and they've never forgiven me and never let me put a movie on.
Well, it sounds like it's a great companion piece to The Apple then, because The Apple is just incredibly bad, but compelling. I knew it would be compelling, to be honest. And do you know who appears halfway through? Is the sort of respected British actress Miriam Margolyes.
Oh, right. Okay. But she's quite... She did something when she was younger. I can't remember what it was now, but something quite surprising. I think she was the voice of something, wasn't she? In something you wouldn't think of, but I can't remember what it was now. I know
early in her career, was it? You said?
Oh no, was it she not the voice in Monkey? No, she was in Voice of Monkey, wasn't she? As a princess. Didn't we talk about that last time?
We were, because I was talking about. Yes, she was in Monkey. Yeah, I was talking about Shogun Assassin and saying it was kind of reminiscent of Monkey. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, yes. Well, we're veering wildly off topic, but obviously that's a good thing sometimes. So, is there anything else?
No, just all those trashy 70s, 80s musicals that have nothing to do with slasher movies.
No, but wouldn't they be good if they did have a slasher? If they'd done a wild slasher, a sort of mix up with Xanadu, some kind of thing, or Can't Stop the Music, Can't Stop the Blood, or something, or
I don't know if I could take the pain of watching the village people all dying. It would be too much.
Would it? Well, they could be the killers, couldn't they? It would be,
or it could be a killer who takes on the guise of each different member of the village people, kind of like Terror Train.
Yeah. It could be like The Hills Have YMCA.
Well, someone should do like a cut-up between Cruising and Can't Stop the Music. That would be good, wouldn't it?
That would be very interesting, yeah.
Cruising.
Well, that's kind of a slasher-esque movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so...
Whoa!
Ooh. Gosh,
Nice.
That was a loud one. So
Stripes obviously doesn't like the apple.
Well, we'll come on to Stripes in a minute. Well, not literally, obviously, hopefully.
Ew.
Please, come on. Right, well, just what have I been watching? Well, we talked a little bit about Prometheus last time, and I think because we're recording this podcast a week before it goes out, so I imagine most people who wanted to see it would have seen it by the time it goes out, but we're not really going to spoil it because Joseph and Nathan haven't seen it yet, but I know Eric had seen it by the time of the last podcast, and I think I went to see it that night or the night after we recorded. So I watched it, and I was a little bit like you, Eric. I think I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. You were a little underwhelmed, weren't you?
Yeah, I actually went to see it again during the week. I found myself outside the cinema and at a loose end, and it was on. I went to see it in 2D. I thought it worked better the second time around. I thought some of the plot holes were filled in with the second viewing, but there still was a lot of plot holes left. But I really enjoyed it, even if it didn't live up to the hype or to the promise of the trailer.
I enjoyed it. I liked it very much, but it wasn't quite... what I love about Alien is the simplicity of like the monster in space. You know, it's a haunted house in space, and it's kind of at the its most basic. It is a very basic monster movie, almost a slasher movie, isn't it? I mean, I know it's not a slasher movie, Eric, because obviously I don't want you to have a hemorrhoid.
No, we have discussed this. I do agree with the slasher comparison with Alien. Yes.
Yeah. But I think didn't you say last time it was a little bit almost like Ridley Scott was a bit like, I better throw in a few horror moments here and there, and didn't seem like the majority of his interest was in that. It was more in this kind of slightly cosmic space soap opera, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that was what was attracting me to the film. I thought it was going to be more along the lines of 2001, whereas it was more like at times it was a very generic sci-fi action summer blockbuster, I thought.
Yeah, I'd like to watch again. I actually thought the 3D was very, very good, actually. I know maybe it's just the way that I saw it, but it was... I thought some of the 3D was quite astonishing, but it was not, like you say, it wasn't like... he missed the trick of having a chest buster coming out, didn't he, of someone's chest and flying out the screen. I mean, but
even having a spaceship flying out of the screen.
Yes.
You know?
Because even then, if you watched it in 2D, it wouldn't make any difference, would it? It wouldn't look out of place, would it? Because you wouldn't see it coming out the screen.
Yeah, no.
I watched it and it wasn't bad. So without giving it too much away, I mean, I thought, a lot of it didn't. We were discussing it afterwards in the pub, as you want to do, and it was everyone I saw it with really, really liked it, and I kind of felt like I was a little bit like the lone voice, where I was a little bit unsure, and also I was a little bit not uncomfortable, but I wasn't really sure about the whole religious stuff going on in it either. That was the other thing that kind of seemed a bit strange to me. But well, we'll be interested to see if Nathan and Joseph do get to see it, and we can chat about it a little bit more detail another time. The other film I saw, which isn't really a slash movie as such, although it kind of again borrows it. It's like Clint Eastwood's Bloodwork from, I don't know when it was from, late 80s or early 90s. And it was kind of reminding me a little bit of the Charles Bronson later Death Wish movies. It's quite silly because I think some of the Dirty Harry movies kind of bordered on that kind of, having psycho killers and things like that. And Tightrope and a few of his other films have kind of borrowed, I think, from kind of the slasher movie toy box without becoming full-blown slasher movies. And this was an incredibly silly kind of Clint Eastwood film, because normally his films aren't that silly. But this one was really, really silly. He kind of plays an aging cop who has a heart attack. And without giving too much away, he gets a replacement heart. But it turns out that the serial killer he's pursuing is killing people with his same blood type, so he can have transplants. And it's as silly as it sounds. And the identity of the killer, who I got in much trouble by going, I bet it must be him, and it was him. So I ruined the movie for everyone else who's watching it. So I have to remember not to do that anymore. But have any of you seen Bloodwork?
No.
No. Well, you're not missing that much. It's quite fun, but it is incredibly silly. So that was that. The other films I watched was, I don't know if we talked about it before, but the Blu-ray from Arrow of Demons 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Did we mention those? Because you've got that, haven't you, Eric?
I do, yeah.
Yes, and it's quite spectacular, really, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I had the previous generation DVDs. Well, actually, previous. They were late 90s ones, and they weren't that good. So this was astonishing to see them. And there's some great extras on them as well.
Yeah. No, I thought it was fantastic. So, well, that's pretty much all I've been watching recently. I've got a film to watch tonight called, I think it's The Resurrection of the Streetwalker. Have you ever seen that, Eric?
No.
It's it's a British film, and it's from a few years ago, and it's basically sounds like a similar. I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know what it's going to be like, but a similar plot to Cut, the Kylie Minogue one, where it's somebody gets hold of a unfinished slasher movie from the early 80s and decides to finish it with disastrous results. But I don't know any more than that, really, so maybe I can talk a little bit more about that on the next show, as long as it's not too horrendous. So
yeah, I've never heard of it, I have to say.
No, okay, well, I think that's all I've recently seen, unless Stripes has got anything to add.
Well, she kind of watched Don't Go in the Woods last night.
Did she? What did she think of it?
I don't know if she liked it very much, because she walked away after a few minutes.
Really? Well, that doesn't sound good. What's she more of a kind of, I don't know, Savage Weekend kind of girl?
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, I think she's crazy because Don't Go in the Woods is probably in my top 10, but, it's just me.
Yeah, she's crazy.
She's the crazy one.
Yeah. She has mental problems.
Yeah.
You three just don't know what you're missing, that's all.
We do.
Actually, I love Don't Go in the Woods.
I
think it's hilarious.
I bet you're going to pick that sometime, aren't you?
You know I am.
Yes, of course we know you are.
Well, it's the lesser of two evils compared to the other one he has lined up.
Yes, I think. Yeah. Well, we shall see. But we'll talk about what's coming next. Whose go is it next time? I can't remember now.
It is me, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, we'll at the end of the show we'll give people some homework about what we'll be covering. But before we get on to that, obviously we've got a double bill coming up. So we're going to start off with The Phantom of Soho from 1963. The storyline is Sergeant Hallam and Chief Inspector Patton of Scotland Yard are called in to investigate several murders which have taken place near the Zanzibar, a seedy Soho nightclub. They soon discover the true story of the hooded killer in a grisly skull mask and rather camp golden gloves, killing off the survivors of the shipwrecked Yolanda. Now, before we get into the film, what I'm going to do is read a little bit from a rather wonderful book which has just come out in America called Slasher Movie Book, aka Teenage Wasteland, and I cover a little bit about the Crimmy in there. So I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs, because if you're not familiar with the Crimmy, hopefully this will explain a little bit about what they are. Okay, it starts with, it would be impossible to talk about the slasher without referring to the other European subgenres that influenced it, including the German Krimi, which simply translates as crime or mystery thriller. Now, Krimi were originally hugely popular German adaptations of the crime novels of British writer Edgar Wallace, probably best remembered now as a co-creator of King Kong. His books were often peppered with garish murders and invariably set around Scotland Yard or in smog-filled London or the English countryside. Highly prolific, Wallace wrote around 175 novels, popular in Germany from the 1920s when the first film adaptations of his books first appeared. In the film, the Krimi was at its height in popularity from the end of the 1950s to the mid-1960s, although it was still being made into the early 70s. Mostly filmed in Germany, the Krimi films fetishised England, presenting a decidedly Germanic idea of Englishness, which produced an almost otherworldly alternative reality. They were often scored with jazz, both urgent and incidental. This helped update old stories, giving them a contemporary edge. These Krimi are typically peopled by dastardly villains in outlandish costumes, featuring everything from a green skeleton in a cape to a whip-grasping monk in a red habit and pointy hat. Well, the Krimi is kind of a little bit of an unsung kind of ancestor of the modern slasher movie, really. They are, if you can imagine, if you're kind of old enough to think back to when black and white movies played on TV in the afternoon on a Sunday, or something like Murder, She Wrote. It's kind of like a Murder, She Wrote type affair, but in black and white, with added, violence and flashes of nudity, and also kind of very much proto-slasher kind of leanings. The Phantom of Soho, I think, is probably one of the most slasherific of the Krimi, because it has a kind of murder pretty much every 15 to 20 minutes. And the way the murders are presented, you've got this kind of dastardly villain, which again is kind of, although it's shot in black and white, they've got these golden sparkly gloves and this skull mask, which actually you don't really see until the end, and is killing off mostly middle-aged men, which makes a very different different aesthetic or whatever to the modern slasher movie, where it's mostly teenage victims. But it presents everything as a kind of slightly sleazy, but in a kind of, and this is from '63, so it's not that sleazy. But what it does have is surprising sort of bouts of nudity, not really kind of graphic, but sequin tops fly off and boobies dance asunder in the Zanzibar nightclub, and it's peopled by very outlandish and very broad characters. From the kind of the scar-faced woman, madame of the club in a wheelchair, to her kind of bizarre kind of surgeon boyfriend or lover, and just various strange things. And at the end, without giving anything away just yet, it has a showdown in an airport where the killer is unmasked. And again, like the Giallo, which we're going to be talking about, these are more kind of whodunits. And so it has in keeping with something like Friday the 13th Part 5, you're not supposed to know who the killer is. But yeah, I'd just be curious, because are you all Krimi virgins?
Well, I've seen a couple, but
you have? Okay.
I've never seen this one.
Right, okay. Well, who wants to go first? I bet you, Eric. What's it?
Okay. Well, I thought I was a Krimi virgin until I was investigating on Wikipedia, which I know isn't the gospel, but it classes Umberto Lenzi's Seven Bloodstained Orchids and Massimo Dallamano's What Have You Done to Solange as Krimi. I mean, they're both based on Edgar Wallace stories, probably very loosely, and they're both co-productions between Italy and West Germany. So if they're considered Krimis, then this is the third one I've seen. But for all intents and purposes, I was a Krimi virgin. So Phantom of Soho was my first exposure, and I did really like it. As you say, like one of the things I wrote down coincidentally to what you were saying there was that it was kind of like Murder, She Wrote. It's very much the way I would describe it is something my dad would watch. He loves sort of crime mysteries, and that's probably what this is far more than a giallo or a slasher movie. I did really enjoy it, however. I mean, I thought the killer's identity when they were revealed at the end was kind of obvious. But you have to cut it some slack considering the age of the film, and I'm sure when it was first screened back in the early 60s, it was considered a major surprise when the killer is unveiled. What I would have liked to have seen more of personally was, you were saying about the Krimi is distinctive for having the killer having ludicrous costumes, and in this one I thought the costume looked really good, but we only get a glimpse of it at the very end. We see the killer in the mask. All we see up until that point are the gold gloves, which, as you say, were quite camp. If you're, all I could think of when I saw them was, Michael Jackson, and like between the gold gloves on the Phantom of Soho and the moonwalk from The Prey in the previous episode, I'm wondering if Michael Jackson was a big slasher and Krimi fan, and he stole all his moves from these movies. I did like the character of Captain Hallam, I have to say. He injected some welcome humour into the film. I love the way to get the trust of a tattoo artist, he just goes in and gets his hand tattooed just so he can get sort of a small piece of information out of him. And I like the way he's suspicious of a man he spots who has a birthmark and says, "A pasty face like that man's got doesn't come from picking strawberries," which was quite fun. I also liked Captain Muggins as well, because, if there's one thing missing from modern cinema, it's seamen, I find. So Captain Muggins as the captain of the Yolander was most welcome into the film, I have to say.
I'm disappointed you didn't see a seaman.
Sorry?
Were you disappointed you didn't see a seaman?
I did see seamen.
Did you? There were some seamen on the bar, wasn't there? Or in the bar.
Yeah, and then he meets another sailor in the alleyway later.
He comes up behind him.
So there was copious amounts of semen in the film.
That's true, actually.
Okay, move on.
I thought the film had a very different look to the Giallo, because obviously most of the street scenes were filmed on a set. Well, I'm assuming they were. So it gives a kind of the same type of feel as those 1930s Universal horror films, shot in black and white, shot mostly on sets. And it's probably closer to a film noir than it is to a Giallo, in all honesty. With the moody black and white, shadowy visuals. It's very well made. It's very well put together. It's very, very talky was another thing I noticed about it. I was trying to make notes while watching it, and because it was subtitled, I couldn't really take my eye off the screen for even a second because somebody would be talking. Is it a film I would return to again? I'm not sure. I think it was a one-watch film only. And we'll get on to sort of the rewatchability of the Giallo later when we're talking about Case of the Bloody Iris. But whilst I did enjoy The Phantom of Soho, I'm not sure I would go back and watch it. And I don't think it instilled an excitement in me to explore more crimmy. Although, if there are trashier ones out there, then maybe I would.
Okay, all right. Well, no, fair enough. Well, thank you, Eric. How about you, Joseph?
Well, I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know if I liked it or if I disliked it. The problem I have was it's a German film, but it takes place in London, and they try to emulate the British humor, but they don't do a very good job of it. It's not as funny. It's not as funny as like typical British humor, but so that kind of felt kind of almost depressing in places. And as Eric says, it's very, very talky, and it goes on and on. And let's see, the killer's identity is pretty obvious. But some of the things I did like, I love the POV shots of the hands going across the screen, going to the victims. And it has some fairly decent kill scenes for the time period. But the one bit I actually did like, and I found funny, was the one of the cops or the inspector or whatever it was, they were going to inspect the photos. So he actually pulls out 3 magnifying glasses for him and 2 other cops. I thought it was funny that he had the 3 magnifying glasses already with him. I don't know why, but it was kind of funny. But overall, like Eric said, I'd seen a couple before. I don't really remember a whole lot, but I don't think The Phantom of Soho is, going to make me want to rush out and see more. If I happen across, more crimmy, I'll definitely, gladly watch them. But I don't know. I can't say I was a fan, but yet I can't say I disliked the film. So I'm just going to say, a marginal recommendation, but with warning. It's not exciting. So if you're in the mood for something talky, then yeah, go ahead. But if you want, nonstop murders, nonstop action, I would look elsewhere.
Okay, well, no, thank you, Joseph. How about you, Nathan?
I think this is probably my least favorite film that we've covered on the podcast so far.
Oh, fighting talk.
And I didn't even dislike it.
You do remember discussing The Last Slumber Party?
I love that movie. I'm the one that picked it.
I know you do.
No, it's meh. I don't dislike it. I didn't like it, but I didn't dislike it. It's definitely a meh for me because there's some things I liked about it. I love the killer's POV shots. Holding up the knife. I like that. I like the knife thrower's death. I kind of like how they shut the lights out, and then when he gets stabbed and then his body flies over the railing. I thought that was kind of neat. I love the finale. When the killer's chasing the final girl, I like how, the killer's in front of her and then, she runs, around the crates or whatever, and then comes to the other side and the killer's in front of her again. It reminded me of the chase scene in the forest, which Phantom of Soho obviously ripped off.
Maybe the other way around, but yeah.
But the problem with this movie is between the good scenes, it's so boring. I fell asleep during it and had to rewatch the rest of it the next day because I couldn't keep my eyes open for most of it. You know, I'm not a fan of movies that deal more strictly with the police investigating these crimes. Like, I don't care about that. I want to see all the nightclub goers gathered at the nightclub and the doors sealed and the killer picking them off one by one. That's what I want. And I know that's not what I'm going to get with the Krimi. So, yes, I'm afraid I have to agree with Joseph and Eric that this movie does not make me want to seek out any more Krimis, unfortunately. But there's still some good to be had here. It's just not enough to make me want to rewatch it, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, no, it's fine. I mean, I kind of, in some ways, I agree with you. I mean, it's not the Krimis aren't my favourite type of movie. You know, if I was given the choice of watching a Krimi and a giallo or a Krimi and a slasher movie, I would, invariably choose, the latter. The reason I thought because we hadn't chosen it, and I think it provides an important link between the, what basically made the slasher movie, and obviously these films were being produced in Germany pretty much prior to the giallo boom, and as Eric pointed out, that the latter productions that we know of as giallo now, with like Seven Bloodstained Orchids and What Have They Done to Solange, are kind of were co-productions with West Germany, and this idea they were based on the Edgar Wallace books, and actually this Phantom of Soho is actually based on his son Brian Edgar Wallace. He wrote the story for this. One thing I do agree. I mean, I think it's a shame there wasn't more. We didn't see the killer in that mask throughout the film, because I think that would have probably added a lot more to it if we'd had the killer stalking people in the mask.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I love that. I love when you actually get to see the mask. I think it looks great, for the time period and that long black cloak. But they didn't show it enough. It's kind of a shame.
I mean, the thing is, a lot of the other Krimi that I've seen, you've got monks in sort of pointy kind of sort of Torquemada or whatever hats. You've got people with blue metal claws, and you've got all these kind of strange, really over the top villains, and that's one of the kind of beauties actually of the Krimi, is that those kind of really over the top villains. And I think if anything, this film missed a trick in some ways. But having said that, it's far more. I think it's more giallo-esque and slasher-esque than a lot of other Krimis. So if you didn't particularly like this because of the lack of kind of slasher-esque elements to it, then you probably wouldn't enjoy some of the other Krimis. I mean, some of the other ones I've seen are really good fun. I mean, there's I think it's The Beast with the Blue Hands. It's got Klaus Kinski in it, and they get more and more towards the giallo, and they kind of they're definitely worth seeking out. But I think some of the older ones, they are kind of a more measured pacing, like many films from that kind of time period. And of course, they are based overwhelmingly. They're essentially crime dramas and police procedural dramas. And so if that's not your thing, then you're not necessarily going to like them. What they did do, and something that the giallo picked up on, certainly was like the case of the Bloody Iris, is you've got the comedy police kind of investigation, and with all the Krimis I've seen, there's always one character who provides comic relief. And in this, it was the Sergeant Hallam's character. But that, again, that's carried through to many slasher movies, isn't it? Sometimes
Halloween 5.
One Joker, exactly. Yeah, but you have the Joker, don't you? In some of the slasher movies to give that kind of comic relief, and many horror movies as well. I liked the fact that, and again, it's made in 1963. There's no way that you would have had that kind of nudity in a British film or even an American film. To be fair, in probably in 1963 in mainstream cinema. And when I say nudity, I mean there's not a lot of nudity, but there's kind of there's tops flying off and things like that. In other films, there's the gore gets because I mean the kills were quite graphic, weren't they, for a film of this time? And there's not huge amounts of blood, but you saw these fat men being stabbed in the gut, fairly close up. In some of the other Krimis, there's one which name escapes me at the moment. I'll look it up in a second. But it's where a stripper has basically a throat cut, and she has this huge arterial spray flying out. So they are kind of they were kind of trailblazers as far as kind of cinematic violence and nudity. It's just they probably don't go as far as we would, when we think about the Giallo and the Grindhouse and other films in the 1970s that kind of paved the way for the slash movement in the early 1980s. But I enjoyed it. Again, like I say, I'm not surprised by what you said, and I'm certainly not taken aback by it, because I would agree that I think it is a bit talky, and it's not the. I've seen quite a few crimi, but I would rather watch a Giallo, to be honest. But I do think it's quite an interesting film for us to cover, just because it has that kind of proto slasher kind of leanings to it. Does anyone else want to say anything? I've got a little bit of background on it, not a huge amount, but just a little bit, just to give some flavour for the background. But is anything else anybody want to say?
What do you guys think about the unmasking of the killer? I mean, did anyone guess the identity of the killer right off the bat?
Well, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? Because if you don't want to know who the killer is in The Phantom of Soho, then stop listening for a couple of minutes. Fast forward a little bit, but obviously, do you want to say who the killer is, Joseph?
It was the woman, wasn't it?
It was, yes. It was the
the black-haired woman. I can't remember her name.
Clorinda
Smith,
wasn't
was it?
Clorinda.
Yeah.
And she was a crime writer, wasn't she? Which kind of gave it a kind of slightly postmodern feel to it, almost, didn't it? In so much that she was, she got involved in the whole thing because she was a famous crime writer,
mirroring Tenebrae to a degree. Another spoiler alert.
Sorry. Absolutely. That was that's what I was going to say. It was it did seem to foreshadow the same twist of Tenebrae, Dario Argento's Tenebrae. So it just makes me wonder if that was possibly lifted from this, but it's it's difficult to know.
Well, the one thing I wanted to mention was that when they actually unmask her, it's so weird, because like the guy, when he unmasks her, he just like starts talking, like he doesn't try to subdue her. He's just like he's just, like, talking to her like normal, and she just stands there. I'm like, okay. But when it shows that POV, when she's going after the I can't even remember who she's going after, but she's getting ready to kill someone, and then the guy turns her around, pulls the mask off, and she's just standing there like, oh, la-di-da, no, this is normal.
Yeah, but I think it's back in those days. It's a bit like Scooby-Doo, isn't it? At the end of Scooby-Doo,
Yeah.
they get a mask and then...
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of, a Scooby-Doo episode, yeah.
Yeah, but...
because that woman she's chasing in that final scene is the woman who spent the whole film in a wheelchair, and then suddenly she's up running around the basement of this airport.
Yes.
I'm going to phone her insurance company.
It reminds me a little bit of... have you watched any of Benidorm, Eric?
Yes.
And it's the nana in that who's in a motorised sort of mobility scooter. And it turns out at the end of the first series that it's just because she's lazy. And then they sort of take it back and she gets up and walks off. But that's reminding me of that. So, but also the other thing, the other Dario Argento link was, did you notice the bird with the crystal plumage?
Yes, the big sort of peacock signal alert thing.
Yeah. And whether or not that was anything to do with that, I don't know. But yeah, that was there because the bird with crystal plumage. Am I right in thinking it was a kind of it was based on the back of a Edgar Wallace? I think it might have been. I might be wrong, but I think it was.
What I thought of when I saw that lighty up peacock lamp thing was Suspiria more than Bird with the Crystal Plumage, isn't there? Yeah, there is a peacocky thing in Suspiria, isn't there?
There is, but I think that was. I think in Suspiria it was referencing Bird with the Crystal Plumage, wasn't it? By having that in that scene, which may have been referencing Phantom of Soho. I don't know, because Dario Argento was a film critic, wasn't he, before he became a director? So he would have seen a lot of films. One thing.
Maybe you should criticize some of his later stuff.
But I was just thinking, Joseph and Nathan are sort of, you could call film critics, and they're about to make a film, so they could be the new Dario Argentos.
Yeah, so that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what
era Argento it could be Suspiria, it could be The Card Player, who knows?
Or Dracula 3D.
It's the former.
Well, let's hope so. Actually, talking of Dario Argento, have you seen the trailer for Dracula 3D?
Yes, I thought a while back. Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, wait a minute, I have. Yeah.
It doesn't instill me much faith really. For
no,
it's terrible.
Well, I've kind of got used to going into Dario Argento films expecting ridiculousness, and I'm pleasantly pleased coming out of like things like Giallo and Mother of Tears at how wonderfully entertainingly trashy they are.
I still need to watch Giallo because I just still can't bring myself to watch it. But it's worth seeing.
See, now, I think Giallo is a lot more boring than Phantom of Soho. That movie is boring.
Okay.
I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was so absurd that I was entertained.
Oh, you were entertained?
Yes.
Wow.
God, I'm stooping to the lows of Nathan now.
Mm-hmm. Lows of me? Like, what do you mean by that?
God, fight.
Nothing.
It's a good job you're on the other side of the Atlantic.
I know. I'm sorry.
I missed what movie y'all were discussing anyway because Stripes is distracting me.
Oh, Giallo, the most recent.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
No.
I haven't seen it, so.
You are not missing anything.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen The Card Player. I tell you, the most recent Dario Argento movie I've seen was Sleepless.
Okay. Well, that's probably
nothing after that.
That's probably the last one that was it Non Ho Sono, or whatever, wasn't too bad, was it?
Yeah.
Was that Sleepless?
That is
Sleepless.
Yeah. But the rest, I've not been particularly interested in. But just going back to Phantom of Soho, it's a extra point, not that we're doing a quiz, but can anyone name the famous fan of Phantom of Soho?
The famous fan?
Toya?
Not Toya, no.
Susie?
Not
Julia
Susie.
Roberts.
Not Julia Roberts.
Barack Obama.
No, it's a kind of contemporary of Susie and Toya, who is dead.
Oh, polystyrene.
No.
Oh.
Janis Joplin.
No, you're not going to get. I'll tell
Sid
you. Who it
Vicious.
is. No, but it's kind of
Nancy Reagan.
It sounds like a soap powder. His first name.
Ariel.
Sud Vicious?
Zest.
No, I'm going to put you out of misery because it's not really fair. But it's Lux Interior from the Cramps was a big fan of Phantom of Soho. So
that reminds, the Phantom of Soho. Now that you mention it, reminds me of a Cramps song almost. You could probably make it a silent film with Cramps music, like Naked Girl Falling Down the Stairs, and it would kind of fit it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He was a big fan before. Well, he died, obviously. Maybe he still is a big fan wherever he is. I don't know, but the other thing, of course, just talking about it, closing up with the Phantom of Soho, was obviously the motive of the killer, because it was basically she was killing off the people, the crew of the ship Yolanda, who had raped her and kept her as a sex slave, hadn't they?
Yeah, and then tried to kill her by drowning her with the boat.
Yes.
So she had a good reason.
She had a good reason.
I think it was valid, her motivation.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like how none of them recognised her is a little bit strange, but you shouldn't question it too much.
Did anyone else notice that there's a scene towards the end where they're chasing each other around, I think it's a railway bridge, and the fight is slightly sped up, giving it a sort of unintentional comical feel, I thought?
Well, like a sort of Benny Hill.
Yeah, do you know the way in the 70s car chases used to be slightly sped up a bit to give them a more of a sensation of speed, but it looked kind of artificial. It was that kind of sensation. I'm sure they were not going for a comical effect, but it was kind of.
Well,
the Three Stooges used to do that a lot too. When they'd be chased by the villains, they'd speed up the camera like really, really fast, and they'd sound like chipmunks, and it was just to kind of give it more of a comical effect. I wonder if they actually got that from them.
I did like the when the body fell from the bridge, and it looked almost as bad as that mannequin falling out of the window in the beginning of Zombie Holocaust.
Oh, that's brilliant! Where the leg flies off it when it hits the ground. Yeah. That was quite. There's more sort of cheesy mannequin action in Case of the Bloody Iris as well, but we'll get onto that shortly.
Yes, indeed. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to say?
I just wanted to note, Sergeant Hallam at one stage wakes up unconscious in a dark room, and I was wondering if that ever happened to you, Justin.
Well, I used to do photography when I was at college, but I don't remember waking up in...
All right. Well, no, I just noticed that, like, on the continent, there's a lot of bars that would have a dark room, and I was wondering, like, in this day and age of digital photography, I was wondering if they were still relevant.
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think most people go to Jessop's to get things enlarged now, don't they?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Shut up, Arnold.
On that note, I don't know. Eric, how about you? Have you any dark rooms in Dublin where?
Not in Dublin, no. But when I go to the continent, there is lots of dark rooms, but they're not set up properly at all. I mean, I don't see any like developing fluid at all. I see fluid, but not developing fluid.
Yeah, where's this going? I'll tell you one little story. When I first moved to Bristol, we went to a pub and I had a dark room in it, and we didn't know it was a dark room because it wasn't really a dark room. It was more of a dark corner, and it was upstairs.
Oh boy!
Sorry.
I said, "Oh boy." Go ahead.
Well, no, because we went upstairs and we didn't even know it was a gay pub, obviously, and we went into it, and this is where there was a stripper on called All the Way Jay. So I'll leave that to your imagination. But we went upstairs to get away from All the Way Jay, and we went upstairs, and there was no one else up there, but there was this curtain across, across the middle of the room. And we were looking at the curtain and thinking, I wonder what's behind there. And as we were looking at the curtain, it kind of, something was knocking against the curtain in a kind of, like boom, 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 boom way. As if, I think you can use your imagination. Then we use our imagination and we left fairly quickly. So
I was in God, we're getting off tangent here. I was in a bar in Spain. And somebody pointed over to this sort of darkened corner and said, you know what that's called? That's called Nosher's Corner. Because, and I said, look, you don't have to explain. I know what you mean when you say Nosher's Corner.
Noshers?
Yeah, Nosher. For a nosh.
For nosh? What, having a nice, what, sort of pie and mash?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a little restaurant in the corner. Why, what did you think I meant?
Oh, that's what I thought you meant. Having a little, having a little canapé with a glass Cinzano.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well,
some pork.
Well, hopefully I had a vegetarian option.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Linda McCartney pork sword.
Yeah. Something's got into you today, Eric, hasn't it? But we won't go there. So, I think all this deserves a little bit of a. How interesting.
Of dead silence.
Dead silence. No, that's because I had it down. Not my trousers. It was.
Nation! No, please! Oh, your hand!
Yes. Well, on that bombshell, before Eric gets too feisty, I think it's all this talk about Captain Muggins and his seamen, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was Captain Muggins has driven me a bit batty.
Okay. Right. Well, talking about
moving on.
Shall we move on to? Shall we take fly me to Roma on the wings of the Bloody Iris? When two women are viciously slain in a luxury high-rise, a beautiful young model moves into one of the vacated apartments, and soon she finds that she is now being stalked by the mysterious killer. The suspects include her ex-husband, a member of a group sex cult, a predatory lesbian neighbour, the deformed son of a sinister widow, and even the building's handsome architect, who suffers from a paralysing fear of blood. Can she expose the masked maniac with a taste for luscious women and depraved murder before she becomes his next victim? So this is the 1971 or 1972 Giallo, the case of the Bloody Iris, which we've already discussed. It was also known under the titles What Are Those Strange Drops of Blood Doing on Jennifer's Body, and also released in the UK as Erotic Blue, which should give you some hint about how much flesh is bared, mostly female flesh, in this movie. This is one of my favourite Giallos because it's kind of, if you've only ever watched Dario Argento Giallo or even Sergio Martino Giallo, this is the trashier end of the Giallo before it went really trashy and sleazy in the later 70s. This is kind of more along the lines of Eyeball, which we reviewed quite a few, maybe over a year ago now. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's the archetypical Giallo. It's got the killer in the black fedora with a black stocking over their face, so you can't see who they are. Wearing, instead of black leather gloves, they've got these kind of yellow kind of surgical gloves, which was also used, I think, in The Black Belly of the Tarantula, and was also used in American Nightmare, the Canadian early 80s slasher. This obviously stars the king and queen of the Giallo, which is Edwidge Fenech and George Hilton, who were in a number of other Giallos before this, including The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward before this. and several after this as well. And it's just kind of patently, it's kind of basically ridiculous story, and the whole thing is very broad, and it's topped off with a very beautiful score, which you heard some of there by Bruno Nicolai, who's one of my favourite composers from the period, who gives Ennio Morricone a run for his money when it comes to the kind of giallo soundtracks. And yeah, it's just peopled with kind of very cartoonish kind of characters, which is borne out by the fact that one of the characters in the film, an old lady who has a hideously deformed, burnt son in a closet somewhere, she goes out and buys horror comics for him, and it kind of this is almost like a comic giallo in so much that everything is very unbelievable. And you've got very, say, broad caricatures, like you've got the very camp photographer. You've got the predatory lesbian neighbour, and her father, who is a retired professor, who also happened to play the kindly vicar in Eyeballs. So a lot of these movies had a lot of the same character actors in them. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's very different to Phantom of Soho, although that was quite trashy. This is trashy in a very different way. So yeah, I'd be interested in hearing how the others, or what you thought of it and how it compared to the other films. So starting off in reverse order, well, only not in reverse order, but the other way went before. What did you think, Nathan?
Oh, now see, this is more my speed. I love Case of the Bloody Iris. I actually kind of like the alternate title better.
Stripes agrees.
Yes.
Yeah, she agrees. I love the What Are the Strange Drops of Blood doing on Jennifer's body. It's kind of a weird, trashy movie title. I like it. I love the character of Marilyn. I mean, she's so, like you said, she's very campy. Like, what is the deal with, her lying in the bathtub, making them believe she's dead, and then jumping up, like, oh, I'm just kidding. And then the guy just slaps her in the face. And she just has a nonchalant attitude after being slapped in the face, like, oh, okay. Whatever, you just smacked me. And I was disappointed in the wrestling woman's death because, I mean, come on. She obviously can kick guys' asses really well, and then she gets taken out so easily, in my opinion. I also thought, it's not really smart for her because, knowing that there's a murderer or there's been somebody murdered, in her building, she opens her apartment door and it's pitch black, and there's obviously power going to the building. So that, I think I would be uneasy enough that I wouldn't go walking into a dark apartment when a murderer's still on the loose. We wouldn't have much of a movie if everybody was smart, though. But yeah, I think my favorite character was Marilyn, so I was a little sad to see her go when she finally, died. Although, Justin, I'm really sorry, and I know that, most people are going to disagree with me on this, but I'm just not a fan of the music. Like, I think there are potentially tense scenes here that music is not tense. I mean, it almost sounds like I don't know, like a crime show type music or something. I don't know. Like, it's not suspenseful to me. Unfortunately, like when she's down, Jennifer's alone, and it should be like the music shouldn't be so overbearing, I guess. But then it kind of starts up with that theme music, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's not that scary. I guess I shouldn't really be looking for this movie to be that scary anyway. Like you said, the plot's, kind of ludicrous, but, I still have a lot of fun with it. It's probably in my top 10 G-word movies.
Okay, all right, well, interesting. Well, thank you, Nathan. How about you, Joseph?
Yeah, I like this one a lot more than Phantom of Soho. The Mizar Harrington, the foot jujitsu girl, she is my favorite character because at the very beginning when the murder in the elevator, it has this kind of Dress to Kill kind of psycho thing going on. It kind of reminded me of Dress to Kill. Maybe it was like a precursor to that elevator murder thing. But I think it was funny that, these people see this dead body in the elevator. She's like, oh, well, I got to go. I got to be across town. And then she just leaves. Yeah. I thought that was hilarious. And plus I find her attractive. She was also in Torso. She played Ursula in Torso. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, this one's a lot of fun. It's really trashy, like you said, and I kind of like the music. I think it kind of adds to the trashy feel. I mean, none of it's really suspenseful. I mean, there's a few, bits of kind of ooh, will they get away moments. But for the most part, I was kind of laughing through the whole thing. I mean, it's so absurd. And I won't spoil it yet because we'll get into that later. But the identity of the killer, I mean, well, I guess I could, but the killer looked to me like, I'm sure, you've seen The Burbs, haven't you?
Yes,
the
a long
Tom
time
Hanks
ago.
movie.
Yeah,
he looked like a crazier Bruce Dern. His hair is all frizzy and wild. The old gray-haired man. But yeah. I mean, I liked a lot of the stuff in this film. I love the whole when she's in the bar and she's beating up the guys, and I was sad to see her go because it kind of, you think maybe she's going to be like the lead because they kind of follow her for a short period of time, and then she just dies so easily. But yeah, I mean, other than that, yeah, it's a fun film. It's a lot more entertaining than Phantom of Soho. It's not as talky, obviously, and that's about all I have to say about it for now.
Okay,
I'll let Eric go ahead and throw in his 2 cents.
Yes, well, Eric, as long as you keep your mind out of the gutter, what did you think of the Phantom of
Well,
Soho?
there was no Captain Muggins to keep my mind in the gutter in this film, but I have to say this was much more my cup of tea. It's a delirious blend of sort of kitschy Hammond organ music, murder, sexy swinger cult, over-the-top 70s decor, all the giallo stuff that I know and love. And it's actually one of the giallo that's probably closer to the slasher movie. I mean, there's moments where Mizar, I think is the character's name, she comes back to her flat, and as Nathan was saying, the lights are out and she sort of has a wander around. Like that type of suspense scene is missing I felt from Phantom of Soho, which made it sort of very far removed from the slasher. I thought the opening elevator murder, as Joseph has already said, reminded me as a sort of slightly less graphic but still quite brutal version of the similar scene at the start of Dressed to Kill. I like the killer's get-up. It reminded me of Blood and Black Lace. I still don't know what a shop would be doing selling a body stocking for your head that has no eye holes. It's like a balaclava with no eye holes. It's like, where do you buy one of those? I thought the end scene in the basement where there's 2 women sort of being stalked by the killer in this sort of steamy basement, kind of reminiscent of Nightmare on Elm Street. I thought that was very effective and very slasher-esque. But I mean, for every sort of serious, tense moment, there is a sort of cheesy moment to balance it out. And like the thing I love most about Cases of Bloody Iris is the cheesy moments. As Nathan was saying, I just love the character of Marilyn. I could have watched a spin-off movie of her. She was just such great fun. She's just so utterly clueless. And I love the way George Hilton gives her such a slap across the face and walks off, and she just carries on as if nothing has happened.
I forgot about that. That was hilarious.
Yeah. She jumps up, doesn't she, and go, I'm a ghost.
The sound effect too. It's like,
I know. Yeah.
It sounded like you broke her jaw, and then she says something like, "Oh, my jaw's a little loose," and then she's like, "Oh well." Then she just goes on about her day.
It's so brilliant. Yeah. I love the. And this was kind of typical of 70s giallo, but the ridiculous gay stereotyping. Like that photographer is just so. He's fell off the Kenneth Williams tree and hit every branch on the way down, I think is the way he would describe it. I love he says something like, "Ooh, slap me, darling, I'd like it." But on the other hand, the character, is it Sheila or Sheena? I'm not quite
Sheila.
Sheena, is it? I got the feeling that she was set up as a possible suspect purely on the basis that she's a lesbian, which could be construed as being offensive. But I'm willing to forgive the filmmakers because they've made such a hugely entertaining film. What I thought, the film is so shamelessly exploitative. I like the way that when we're first introduced to Edwige Fenech's character, she's topless, although she has a kind of a painted-on blouse, which is quite an arresting image, I have to agree, even for somebody who doesn't, subscribe to Booby Weekly. But I like the way that sort of every second scene, her blouse has been ripped off by somebody. If it's not her sort of ex-cult leader husband, it's the killer. Everyone just keeps ripping her blouse off and her boobs come flying out, or else she's in some kind of like skimpy bra or something. So for me, the film is definitely in the upper tier of giallo. It's not quite there with Deep Red or The House with Laughing Windows, but it's just so hugely entertaining. And watched back to back with Phantom of Soho, that became so obvious, just how entertaining the film was, endlessly rewatchable. Whereas I was saying The Phantom of Soho might be one I probably would never return to. I can see myself constantly coming back to Cases of Bloody Iris.
I Well, I think I agree with you that I mean the homophobic nature of the film is far too exaggerated to really be offensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the characters are just so kind of over the top. I mean, you've got the predatory lesbian who is, I mean, she's shamelessly predatory, isn't she? Every time she's near an attractive young lady, she's kind of like, oh, maybe we should move in together. And, and she said, oh, anyone would find you distracting, dear, and all these kind of things. And but it's actually quite different with Eyeball. Remember, there was a lesbian couple in that, wasn't there? I mean, admittedly, one of them does have her throat slashed when, and blood flying all over her boobs. Apart from that, it was quite progressive because they showed the lesbian couple as actually in quite a favourable light. Whereas when because at one point they say something like, oh, maybe she should move to Denmark, didn't they? Which I thought was probably some kind of Edwidge Fenech and Marilyn were sort of laughing about Sheila and her advances. Did you get an impression? This is one of the things that, because the film has a kind of cyclical. It's one of those kind of, the beginning shot and the end shot are the same, aren't they? Roughly, there's different people. But was it somebody, the woman who was going up in the lift at the beginning? Did she didn't live there, did she? Was she basically going up a prostitute to sleep with Sheila?
That's the impression I got, yeah.
Yeah. And then at the end of the film, without giving too much away, you had, I mean, this is one of the things that I've seen talked about time and time again, because it's either makes sense or it doesn't make any sense, is the film ends with a woman on the phone and another woman saying, come on up. And it was either Sheila was still alive, or maybe the elderly neighbour next door had gone over to the Sapphic side.
I was going to ask you about that.
Ew.
I know.
I had seen the film a long time ago and I'd forgotten it, so I acquired a copy to watch for the show. But it cut off right when she's putting the change in the phone, and I couldn't remember what happened after she got on the phone.
It's kind of just her saying, I think it's another woman saying, why didn't you come on up?
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah,
and that's all it is, and it doesn't really, because basically, you don't want us to spoil it, which I think we probably already spoiled it a bit anyway. But to be honest, it's not, the mystery aspect of it is not as important in some ways as some of the other giallo. But I mean, to spoil it completely is that the killer is Sheila's father, who, well, I don't know what he's driven mad by, but he accidentally kills Sheila, Sheila and Edwidge Fenech, Jennifer's character, are down in the basement, and Sheila's character gets kind of basically a huge burning steam into her face. And rather than run away from it, she kind of throws herself around in it and kind of dows herself fully for about 20 seconds in this burning steam. And then she's on the floor looking like, Freddy Krueger. And but then it seems like she dies, but I don't know. You probably wouldn't die from something like that, would you?
No, but you'd want to be charging a prostitute at a large rate if you're going to be looking like Freddy Krueger.
Yes, very possibly. But it was also, I mean, what I loved about it was because he had the elderly, the neighbour did as well, didn't the woman who had her kind of crispy fried kind of sex offender son living in a closet. And when one of the favourite scenes, Edwidge Fenech goes in there snooping because she can hear a male voice in the apartment, and the woman, she comes back and finds her, and she starts screaming, "You whore! You harlot!"
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
your painted face, all this kind of, the stink behind your pretty clothes and this thing. And of course, Edwidge Fenech, despite being menaced throughout the film, always finds time to have a new outfit for every scene, doesn't she? Which I thought was very good. And her makeup is always perfect, isn't it? Because
I always think that she looks like the third Cheeky Girl because of the sort of the eye makeup, the way it looks.
Well, it's that kind of weird thing. They had it must have been at the time, wasn't it? They all had that eye makeup, didn't they? All the women, because the eyelashes go off. They don't meet at the edge of the eye, do they? They go off at an angle, so it makes the eye look bigger, doesn't it? And they all had that. So. But yeah, she always had, just didn't matter how many times she was slapped around or her bra was ripped off or anything like that, or she was, face down in shag pile, she still always had perfect makeup, which is obviously the sign of, a true star. So, was anything else you want to say about Case of the Bloody Iris?
My favourite line in the movie belongs to Marilyn, obviously, because she's my favourite character, where she says, "No orgies, I get motion sickness."
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, if you have motion sickness, you should probably avoid orgies, or at least, 3 ways.
Yeah.
I suffer from motion sickness.
I like when she goes on about sort of she prefers strangulation for murder because it's cleaner, doesn't she, and things like that. And this kind of it has to be repeated. This kind of the whole thing of her going into the bath, because she runs the fastest ever bath in the history of anything, doesn't she? Because she says, "I'm going to go and have a shower." Then within 30 seconds, the bath is full and overflowing, and it's the same bath where Mizel Harrington was drowned. And then she thinks it's a good idea to hide under the bath and jump up and shout, "I'm a ghost." And it's some kind of really funny kind of thing. And the other thing, of course, of the film, and this is something that a lot of giallo had, and this is why it kind of a link with something like Phantom of Soho, was the kind of comedy police who were pretty. The chief inspector was more interested in collecting stamps, wasn't he?
Yes, and filing his drinking glasses in a filing cabinet.
That's what I love that, didn't it? When they had where are the glasses, and I've got them filed under B for bar, which I thought was true class, wasn't it? So,
yeah.
And of course there's also the kind of the very kind of skanky looking cult leader, wasn't there? Who was Jennifer's ex-husband, who he was saying the sex cult was made up of many members, which got a little titter.
I'm sure it did, because you're so immature, Justin.
But I mean, as far as because it was made in 1971, so it was made pretty much at the height of the giallo, wasn't it? It almost seemed like it was parodying it a bit, didn't it?
I don't know if that was deliberate, though.
Yeah.
No, it probably wasn't. Because it was made by Anthony Ascott, who was Gelani, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, Guilino, or what's anyway. Carnimio. So it's just what a wonderful Italian.
Gualiano Carnimio.
But he only made this is the only giallo he made, and he made loads of spaghetti westerns. But I thought he did a pretty good job. Didn't he? It was very stylish, wasn't it? All the shots of outside the apartment block and looking down the kind of central staircase down the apartment block. And also the other we talked about the links with the last film to Tenebrae, but also in this one you had the scene, didn't you, where Marilyn is killed outside in daylight, wasn't she?
Which
is
was a great scene,
to
actually.
John Saxon, wasn't it, being killed in Tenebrae? And that was quite sort of interesting. And it's that whole thing. It's in some ways it's a bit like the Friday the 13th, isn't it? Where Marilyn comes and says, "Oh, it's you, hello," and then sort of gets a scalpel to the stomach.
That scene kind of reminded me of the opening of Scream 2, where what's the name of that actress again? I think she's married to Will Smith.
Jada Pinkett.
Pinkett. Where she gets killed and she's up on the stage and she's clutching her stomach because she's been stabbed, and nobody seems to realise. That's kind of like what it reminded me of, where Marilyn is stumbling around the streets of Rome, and nobody sort of realises she's been stabbed. They're just walking past, ignoring her. I thought it was a very strong scene, and kind of a sad end for Marilyn, who was such a jokey character, such a fun character.
Yes. Yeah, it would have been better for her to have a comedy death, wouldn't it?
Like sort of final destination.
Like her bra pinged off and it got caught in a lorry going past or something like that. I don't know. Something would have been more fitting. But the other thing that struck me, and this is kind of what was interesting to look at it compared to something like Halloween and Jamie Lee Curtis, although actually it's probably not the best example, but say if you look at someone like Amy Steele in Friday the 13th Part 2, and you look at Edwige Fenech, who's menaced, and she's quite resourceful. She always seems to get away from whoever's menacing her. But until right at the end, of course, it leaves it up to the two men fighting, doesn't it, to save her. And she just looks on looking, sort of fairly... ineffectual, isn't she? She's kind of she becomes the little woman in inverted commas who just kind of stands around waiting to be saved, which is a shame.
And that's the scene where the sort of unconvincing, crash test dummy falling down the whatever you call it, down the stairwell, comes into play. Not quite as bad as Zombie Holocaust, but just the way the limbs flail unconvincingly as it drops is quite comical.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else we want to say about Case of Bloody Iris? Because I think this is going to be one of our shortest podcasts, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, is it? But
well, just what I'll say about the Giallo and its benefit over the or its pros over the Crimi, from what I can see from my short introduction to the Crimi, is that even if Case of Bloody Iris was really, really boring plot wise, and that the sort of 70s kitsch glamour of it would have kept me entertained, and that's kind of why I would, be willing to watch any Giallo, whereas if I was watching any Crimi, I'd be kind of a bit ho-hum about it.
Well, I think it's, I mean, I think it's also partly to do with when we were born slightly, isn't it? I mean, I think
so, yeah.
For me, it's kind of like the Crimi from the 1960s. It seems another generation away, and it's sort of, I wasn't alive. Even me, I wasn't alive when Phantom of Soho came out. I know it's difficult to believe, but and I think that has something to do with it. In the same way that, to be honest, I wouldn't be interested in picking up a copy of Monsters of Filmland because I'm not interested in that time of horror movies particularly. It doesn't do it for me necessarily. And I think there is if you have an interest in that time, then it will have more resonance for you. But
having said that, Phantom of Soho was made around the same time as Blood and Black Lace, and like Blood and Black Lace would be a film I would really, really like.
Yeah, I agree. You can trace this film back to our first Giallo episode with Eyeball. Georges Rigaud, he was in Eyeball. He's the professor in this film. And he was in the Eyeball as the priest.
I think Justin might have mentioned that.
I did. I was obviously.
Did you? I didn't hear
having
that.
a nap, but
sorry.
That's because Joseph was thinking of Edwige Fenwick-Topless, I think.
Yes. I mean, do you find her attractive, Joseph?
Yeah, she's okay. Like I said, I like Mizar Harrington better. I find her more attractive. I got jungle fever. What can I say?
Well, I thought the casual racism of the film as well was quite not fun, quite funny, wasn't it? It was
you calling me a racist?
No. I was just seeing off when they were saying things like, the photographer goes, she's black, but not that black, so she's good for role.
I didn't pick up on that line.
Didn't you? Yeah, he says. No. Yeah, he says. She's black, but not too black. And then
God!
And one of them
I think
says,
they were kind of implying that her skin tone is not that black, and that she doesn't act as black as other black people. I think that's what they were kind of going for, like a double entendre thing there.
Well, the thing was, it's completely politically incorrect, and it was kind of one of the other characters says, every man wants a black girl, and things like that, and it was kind of so you've got the casual homophobia, you've got the racism, and you've got the kind of slapping women. So it doesn't get more early 70s, does it, than this film really?
No, you wouldn't get that in a multiplex cinema fair these days. I wouldn't say.
No.
You definitely show this at a battered women's shelter.
No, I mean it's of its time. I mean, I watched it last night with a woman who's watching it. I mean, she wasn't offended by it, and it's not like, I mean, it's like, say, it's so over the top that you would have to be pretty po-faced to be offended by it, I think, but I don't know, maybe some people would, but again, to be honest, if you're going to watch a Giallo, they're Italy in the 1970s and the machismo of Italian men in these films, basically doesn't get more broad than the 70s Giallo, really, does it? With that kind of political incorrectness, and so it's of its time, but that's why it kind of makes it entertaining. I think it's of its time. You couldn't do that again. You couldn't do that today, really, could you? It's not the kind of film you can make today.
Definitely not.
No. And I think that's part of its joy, really, and I think it's why they're, I mean, I agree. I think Case of Bloody Iris is a lot more entertaining than Phantom of Soho, but I enjoy Phantom of Soho, more so than probably you three probably did. And I would say that if you were interested in checking out a Crimi, then Phantom of Soho is a good place to start, and to see if you like them. But there's a lot of other ones that I've watched as well, which are very entertaining as well, and very kind of over the top and silly, but in a different way to the Giallo, and it's a more of a measured thing. And it's a German sense of humour. I mean, Germans aren't known necessarily for their sense of humour.
No. But like I was saying, I wouldn't mind going back and covering another Crimi at a later date. But Phantom of Soho is not one that's got me in a rush to do so.
Okay.
But if you can name a few that are, I think, a little more I don't know, maybe a little more upbeat, then yeah, I would be all for it.
Well, I thought for me they need to be a bit trashier.
Yeah, trashier, sleazier.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if I can get one with Klaus Kinski in it, that may be.
Yeah. Well, your comparison to Phantom of Soho and Murder, She Wrote, I think, was spot on. I mean, it is that sort of a level of murder mystery suspense. The same level you would get in an episode of Murder, She Wrote, which I think was the problem with it for me.
But then in Murder, She Wrote, Angela Lansbury's cardigan didn't fly off, did it?
That's true. That's true. The one thing with the one thing that Phantom of Soho I think had in common with the Giallo was, I think, the fact that the character of Corinne was constantly in her bra and panties, which was very much like what Edwige Fenech would sort of ended up doing for most of the early 70s.
I did like the fact that Corinne, who was kind of the photographer, cigarette girl, ended up as an undercover nun at the end of the film.
Undercover Nun sounds like a great movie, possibly starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, it does, doesn't it? But I just love the idea.
I don't know if he could play a nun, could he?
Oh, it would be hilarious.
Yeah. But no, it's just great that she turns up at a nun at the end. It's kind of, it shows it's pretty tongue in cheek. I mean, she wasn't actually a nun; she was a nun.
Yes,
she was pretending
to be smuggled out of the country. Yeah,
to be smuggled out of the country away from the killer. And I love the fact that the killer had placed a body on the conveyor belt. So when people collected their luggage, the body turned up, and they all went. Oh! But yeah, so that's I mean, is there anything else you want to say about our Euro horror double bill before we move on to feedback?
No.
Well, one last thing I was going to say, because Nathan, you said about, obviously you enjoyed the other title, the tentative title, What Those Strange Drops of Blood Doing on Jennifer's Body. There were no drops of blood on Jennifer's body, were they? Or what do you reckon they were?
No. There was Bloody Irises, though.
Yes.
Which makes the alternate title relevant, but yeah. But Giallo titles are often really, really cryptic. And I mean, a lot of the time they do sort of make sense once you watch the film.
Well, a lot of times they're phonetic. The English, they're phonetic. They're like translations, so they're lost in translation. So it may be completely
what are these strange radiant cutlery doing on this sexual teenager?
Indeed. Yes. What would your Giallo title be? What would your Giallo title be for Phantom of Soho, Eric? Would it be something to do with Miggins and or Muggins and drops of semen and stuff?
Why was Captain Muggins killed off so early, or something? I don't know.
Or the Black Cloak kills with sparkly gloves.
Oh, speaking of black cloaks, the one thing I meant to say about Case of Bloody Iris is there's a scene sort of 2/3 the way through where Edwige Fenech appears in knee-high boots and a big black cloak. And I was thinking, gosh, she looks kind of like a goth. I was wondering if Justin picked up on it.
Well, a little bit. Well, she had that long black hair, didn't she, as well?
Yeah.
So I think she would have made a good goth.
It looked like she would look like she was off to see the mission or Fields of the Nephilim or something. Yeah.
But she had great fashion sense, didn't she, for somebody who didn't earn very much money?
Well, I don't know, the modelling business can be quite lucrative, no?
Well, Marilyn was kind of was trying to, she was going to get into prostitution, wasn't she, with Sheila?
Oh yeah.
So she needed extra money.
Maybe they were just greedy.
Yeah, I love that scene. Also, the scene where Edwige Fenech's character sees her ex-husband while she's doing the photo shoot, and she has those kind of like freak out moment, doesn't she?
Yeah, and the camera spins, insanely.
And another camera spinning in Phantom of Soho. One of my favourite bits in that, which we didn't mention, was the knife throwing act, when the woman's on the board that's spinning, and then the camera spins as well, doesn't it? Which I thought was kind of
that was a really good shot, I thought.
And it kind of hints towards those kind of flashy camera angles and things of Argento and the kind of some of those Giallo.
And the thing I noticed about Phantom, like there was. Apart from that, there were other interesting camera angle shots, but also the screen transitions. There was lots of sort of very creative use of sort of transitions between scenes, which again was very stylish. Considering the rest of the film, as I said, was kind of Murder, She Wrote level.
Okay. So Nathan, have you got anything you want to add before we move on to feedback?
No.
Okay. How's
what about
Stripes
doing?
Yeah.
No. Was that Stripes or was that you? Okay.
The world's first talking cat. You can make some money off that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, shall we move on to feedback? I don't think we've got much because we are doing this a week in advance, really, aren't we? But I think Joseph, you've got a little something up your sleeve, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is from Chris Bennett. He left this on the Facebook wall. He says, "Hey guys, I hope all is well with you. This feedback has been a while coming, but better late than never, as they say. Slasher movies have always been a big part of my entertainment. As an avid reader of the Hysteria Lives website, I was really excited to see that Justin will be involved in a podcast about the movies that I love. The first few episodes were awesome, but with the addition of Nathan, the panel was complete. I always enjoy the discussions between you guys, and also enjoy the interviews when available. You all have been important in making this podcast successful, and I can't imagine the show without any one of you guys. You have produced a cool, entertaining podcast, and I appreciate it. Thanks again, guys. Keep it up." Chris Bennett. He says, "I also have a question for you. 100 points to anyone who knows. What is the only Friday the 13th movie where the characters do not know Jason's name, which means the audience doesn't hear Jason's name?"
I think I know.
I already guessed it correctly.
Yeah, me too.
Go on, then, Nathan.
What do you
What
think,
was it?
Justin?
After I did.
Is it part 3?
Yes.
Is it part 3?
Yes.
I said that already, Justin.
I know. Well, I was just,
What
was
do I
just being
win?
An echo. Yeah, what does he win? 100 points.
100
of what?
points. That's what he said.
Can
You
I
win
get that in
100
money?
points.
Oh.
What is that in, like, is it pounds or whatever?
Euro for me, sadly.
Yes. But it's probably about £2.50 and about 500 euros, is it?
Yeah, possibly.
What is that in American dollars?
I don't know.
50 cents?
50 cents.
It's probably a quarter. What's a dime?
Because
Is that
our
10
dollar
cents?
is, like, very worthless here.
Is it? It's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as the euro, which is going down faster than Eric on Captain Miggins.
Muggins.
Muggins. Why do I keep on Miggins? I don't know.
No. See the way I'm not denying it, though.
It's only because I know somebody who used to know somebody who used to call somebody Mrs. Miggins, but I can't remember why.
There
But anyway.
was a Mrs. Miggins in Blackadder 3.
Oh, that's probably why then. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for those nice words anyway. It's Christopher, is it, you said?
Chris Bennett, yes.
Chris
Bennett. Thank you, Chris. And Joseph, do you want to regale our audience, if they haven't already deserted us in droves, how to get in contact with us?
Yeah, you can leave us a voicemail. That's 858-233-9281. You can email us at the.hysteria.continues@gmail.com. We're on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/The Hysteria Continues or Hysteria Lives or The Body Count Continues. And you can go to the Hysteria Lives website. That's hysteria-lives.co.uk. You can go to the Body Count Continues and find us. We're at the-bodycount-continues.com. We're on Twitter, twitter.com/THC_podcast. And if you want to purchase some merchandise, that's cafepress.com/The Hysteria Continues. And that's how you can reach out and touch us.
Oh, indeed.
And some new, you did some new updates on Hysteria Lives this week, Justin.
Yes.
Mask of the Red Death, the 1989 movie, and Midnight, the John Russo movie.
That's correct. Yes. I guess we're to talk about those very quickly. Have you guys seen those movies?
I've seen Midnight. I haven't seen Mask of the Red Death.
I think you would like Mask of the Red Death.
I was reading the review and I'm very intrigued, so I'm possibly going to try and acquire it, yes.
It's got
Mask of the Red Death is up on my website, by the way.
Yes.
If you don't feel like
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Baby Jesus, it's an alternate form of Baby Jesus-ing.
Yeah.
Although I don't think it's on DVD yet, is it?
No, I think it's quite difficult to get hold of.
Yeah.
How about you, Nathan? Have you seen either of those?
I saw Midnight like 15 years ago.
Okay.
Can I just
love
say,
Midnight.
While we're talking about
very
Midnight,
underrated.
just to plug Arrow Film yet again, they're selling off Midnight DVDs for $5 on their website. If you directly from their website, arrow.co.uk.
Yeah, I just bought Deadly Blessing from Arrow for £11, and now it's £5, so I'm a bit annoyed.
Well, that happened to me this week when, as Nathan knows, I bought More Brains, the making of The Return of the Living Dead, a few months ago for like whatever, $20, and discovered then that it is in the extras of the Return of the Living Dead Blu-ray that's just come out in the UK and Ireland.
It's a real bargain. That I've just bought that. It's £11.
I know, and it's actually really, really good, the DVD, or the Blu-ray. So, Nathan, that spare DVD I have going is on its way to you on Monday.
Thank you.
And we talked last time about Shout Factory or Scream Factory doing all those fantastic new slasher movies.
Yes, very excited, yes.
And I think apparently the bonus disc on the Halloween 2 Blu-ray and hopefully DVD is going to be the TV cut of Halloween 2.
Yeah, I saw somebody mention that. That's great, actually.
Because I think on the Universal 30th anniversary Blu-ray, which most of us probably got, that they had all the scenes but put in as extra, didn't they? Extra kind of just clips.
Yeah.
But this will actually be incorporated into the movie, which will be fantastic. The only downside, I think, was the Scream Factory thing is that it's region coded, so which isn't a problem for DVDs, but Blu-rays it is a problem.
Yeah.
Because chipped Blu-ray players are quite expensive. I think it's about £200 or something to get one, isn't it?
Well, if it's that price, it's not too bad, I suppose. So I could probably splash out.
Oh, okay.
What? God, for once, I'm trying not to be rude. And well.
Did you say slash out?
Splash out.
Splash out. It's the
because I thought you'd say slash out. Slash is a fanfic.
You've got Captain Muggins in the brain, Justin.
Well, it reminds me of a little anecdote I had from when I was in India, and we went through a town called Kumbum, and which is spelled Cumbum, and it was Kumbum. And we were driving, and we were like, we had the taxi driver was driving us through, and there's 4 of us in the car, and the bus went past, and it was a Kumbum Express. And we were just kind of making all these cracks about splashing out in Kumbum and things like that. It was just, what fun we had.
It takes me back to Grope Cunt Lane.
Yes. Grope Cunt Lane, yeah. They still haven't renamed that yet in Bristol, but one day I make that my mission to bring back that old English name back to the streets of Bristol. So, on that, as we've dragged the podcast down to the very, very depths of depravity once again, Eric, next time you're going to regale us with something. What have you have chosen what we're doing next time?
I have chosen, and apologies to non-Euro cult fans, but we're staying in the Euro cult area. We're off to Bloody Moon to follow Mr. Spoon. No, we're Jess Franco's Bloody Moon is going to be our next pick.
Yeah, well, that's going to be quite a fun one to do, isn't it? I think
one of my favourites. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, any final words, Joseph?
Yeah. Hi.
Thank you for that. Very insightful. Nathan and Stripes from Tennessee. Have you got anything you want to say before we go?
No.
No. Okay. The painter did no. And how is Stripes doing? She's been very quiet.
She's sleeping.
Oh, well, that's nice. Okay.
Let's wake her up.
Wake her up.
No, I will not.
Okay.
Because then she'll annoy me.
I just want to finish off by saying, slap me, darling, I love it.
Well, I think one day, somebody, if you listen back to all the old episodes and you can put together a nice little trailer for us of our best moments, is there somebody out there who could do that for us? I don't know. Well, maybe someone will surprise us, but I think we'll play out with a little bit more music from Case of Bloody Iris. Apologies to Nathan, and we shall see you next time. So thanks for joining us, and have fun whatever you're doing.
Bye.
Bye.